Hello and welcome to STIW2044 Mobile Programming. My name is Ahmad Hanis, and today I would like to talk about the following outline. The first thing I'm going to talk about introduction to Android Studio, and then how to create new project with Android Studio, and once you have your project created, how to test your application. There are two ways actually you can test, either through the use of Android virtual device, or you can install the application on real Android devices. So the assumption for this class is that you already done with the installation. So let's start it. Alright, so let's get started. So the first time that you run your Android Studio, after installation, you'll be given with the following dialog screen. So for me, since I already installed this for quite a while, this side of the window listed all my past application, my past project. So for you're not going to have any project listed in this section. Alright, there are a number of options that you can do from this screen. You can start new Android Studio project. You can also start Flutter project. You can also open existing project if you have one, or you can get from version control such as CVS, Git, Google Cloud, etc. etc. You can profile or debug your APK and import project from Eclipse, or import an Android code example that comes with the SDK. So for now, let's start with creating new project. For your knowledge, my current version is during the recording is 3.2.1. So go ahead and start a new Android Studio project. So for the first time, you'll be given with the following interface. So this interface basically will describe about your application. So the application names, this is basically the name of the application. So make it sound catchy, or any application names that you have in mind. So for example, my first application, the company domain here, this is basically for your package name later. Okay, so and it is also very important, because once you state it here, this is going to be used as part of Google Play identification. So normally or usually we use company domain. For example, for UM, you can use um.edu.my. So you're going to have your package name my.edu.um.my first application, but normally we keep it simple. For example, I usually use my own domain, which is slumberger.com, and it's usually 3 dotted package name. Okay, com.slumberger.my first application. Okay, you can change that also. And project location, this is where your project will be saved. So if you like to upload to GitHub, or you like to share, you like to save the project to a different directory, you can go into this project location. package name. So as I stated before, this is going to be your package name. Down here, if you like to include C++ support for your application, such as library or any external C++ component that you like to use together with your application, and also if you like to include also Kotlin support. So Kotlin is another programming language that has been integrated into Android Studio, and Kotlin supposed to be not a replacement but a complement programming for Android. The default language for Android Studio is Java. However, Kotlin now gaining attention due to the simplistic of the programming. The number of line of codes is much shorter compared to Java, so they can be used together in the project if you like to use Kotlin, but for now leave it empty. Next, this is where you set the target devices. Select the form factor and minimum SDK. So as you know, Android is based on the version of the Android type. There's a lot of Android version. So at the moment, the latest version is available is Android Pie. So if you decided that your application can be used from Android, which Android version? Okay, so normally by default it's set the lowest Android version that your application is going to be supported is from Android 4.3. However, there are certain conditions that your application can only run on Android 5 or Android 6 because of the library needed to execute your application. So you can set the minimum SDK for your application. So which means that if you set that to a much higher API, your application can run based on the devices that run on that particular Android API. The rest, if you like to develop for Android Wear or Android TV or Android Things, so you can use that. But for now, use the default version, the default option, Android 4.3. Next, this is the activity. So in Android, the interface that appear when user run the application, the interface that appear to user is what we call as an activity. So there are a number of activity available here, depend on the type of the application that you like to develop. With no activity, or by default with empty activity, means that you have nothing inside. Or you can start with bottom navigation activity. So that is basically depend on how you design your application, how you started to design the application. Empty activity is by default, so we're going to use that. There are some other options also. If you like to develop for Google Map application, you can also use that, but of course you can add this later. So we choose empty activity because we don't want anything on our layout. Press next. So since we are creating new empty activity, so we need to give the activity names, the file name. So activity names mean activity.java by default. So this is the Java file. So for every activity created, for every activity created, there will be new there will be two files for each, the Java file and also for the layout file by default for every activity. So main activity is the Java file, activity main, activity underscore main is the XML file which correspond to the layout design. So do not change anything. Finally press finish and wait. Okay, this is going to be quite relative in terms of performance, how long it takes to load your development environments once new project has been created. It might take quite a longer time for certain type of computer. As my suggestion, you need at least processor Intel i5, 4 gig of RAM or better 8 gig of RAM, and your main drive as SSD. You need SSD to avoid bottleneck in terms of the data transfer. So that is the minimum requirement for running Android Studio. Alright, so by default, this is for every new project creation, you're going to get the following. So welcome to Android Studio. So this is your development environment where you're going to develop your application. You're going to write the codes and you're going to compile the application into as a mobile on a mobile device, in a mobile device. Alright, so by default you will be given with the following. So the left side here, this is your project directory. Okay, this is your project browser where all the files related to the project will be listed in this project structure, project directory structure. You can change the view to a different structure, but this is basically how the project is going to be listed. You can change the view, but leave it as default for first. There are a number of folders here: Java and REST manifest. This tree directory is your main directory. So Java directory contain your main activity file. Your resource directory contain under layout subdirectory contain activity main.xml. So this is the location of the file. The third file here, this is your project properties. Your project, your application manifestation will be stored in here. So we leave this alone at first. We're going to just start with the basic. So by default, these two files are going to be displayed in this section. This is your development console, where you can design your interface by using the interface designer here through activity main.xml, and you can also write your codes in main activity.java. Java. So as I mentioned before, these two files are very important. For every activity that we created, we're going to have files, or this pair of files that will handle each other. So by default, we have activity main. So this is basically where we will design our application. So activity main.xml is provided a lot of tools for you to design your application. You can just drag and drop to this container here. You can use the palette inside in this section and drag and drop all the required component, all the needed component that you want to this container. So this is the palette. This is where all the design, all the component that you needed can be drag and drop into your layout. Down here, this is the component tree. Whenever we add a component to this container, it's going to show down here the relationship, the tree structure of that component. So for example, right now we have one component called text view right in the middle of the layout, and this is basically a text that describes hello world. So this is text view. Either you want to add more, you can just drag and put it inside here, as simple as that. However, for this, since this is a constraint layout, you need to set the constraint for the component. So for example, if I would like to add one more text view, I can add it here. Then you can see the constraint for this second text view. Alright, so now you can see this component tree grows and add another component. There are two components here. So for the layout of the application, I'm going to describe about that later. Since there are a number of constraints, a number of layout that are available for each activity, so I'm going to cover that later, but I'm going to remove that, and we're going to look at the default one, the one that's provided whenever you created new application. So when you create or when you selected any component, okay, so for example, this component here, you can see that in this section, the attribute for that particular component. So this attribute is very, very important, since whatever changes that we like to set for that particular component can be modified here. Yeah, so for example, the layout width, the width of this component, the height of the component, you can set the size here, or you like to change in terms of the font, or because this is a text, we can change the font, and also you can change the size of the text. Let's say I want to increase the size, I want to set the style of the text bold. So that can be done through this window here, these attributes here. And you can expand more by pressing this button. There's a lot of options that you can modify. You can change the color, you can change the behavior of that particular component that is available through attributes window. There are some other options. Advanced option, if you like to, you can also access, since this is an XML file, you can access through this text editor. Okay, so you can see the text editor here. It's based on XML. So the tag here describe about one component, which is text view, called text view, and then this layout called constraint layout, and these are all the properties available for that particular layout. This is all the properties inside this XML tag called text view. Alright, coming back to design. I'm not going to change anything, so this is just basically to describe how you can design your interface. It's all about just drag and drop. You can either drag, drop here, or you can also drag, drop inside this component tree. For the main activity, this is where when we run the application, the code compile into execution, it look for this file. So this is a Java file, a Java code. As you can see from here, public class, the name of the class is main activity, where it extends to the app compat activity. This is the library that we imported, and this is the package name, as I mentioned before. And inside this class there's another class, and what we call there's a method, or what we call as an override method called onCreate. So this is basically equivalent to public static void main in a standard Java programming. However, in Android, it is called protected void onCreate. So whenever Java execute, Android Studio execute Java and Android application, it look for the onCreate method. So this onCreate method is actually part of Android application lifecycle or activity lifecycle as described here. So whenever an activity has been launched, it goes through a series of override method, which is the first is onCreate. Okay, so this is the method. When you click on the application, and so this corresponds to the onCreate method here. So whenever an activity has been launched, it will look for this onCreate method and execute anything inside this method. So inside this method, there's only two instructions here, where it calls super onCreate method again, which is to load activity main, which is to load the interface exactly. Okay, so that's what onCreate method is, and in this context, it loaded activity main, which is the interface. So that is very, very clear in terms of the execution of the activity. Alright, so without any programming, let me start with how to run the application. Right, so to run the application for Android, you can run either by using Android virtual devices, or you can use real Android phone or tablet to run the application. So I'm going to start with the Android virtual devices. So to run this, if you don't have any Android device, real physical hardware, you can run this on a virtual devices. So to access virtual devices, you can go to Tools, AVD, and since I already have 3, so I'm going to show you how to create one. Alright, so create virtual device, and from here you can select phone type. If you like to try anything with Google Play or Google Play services, application with Google Play services, choose the one with Play Store icon. However, bear in mind, if you're running on a low performance PC, do not choose higher resolution devices. So if you're running on a low device or a low performance computer, look for something like this. If you're running on good performance, you might be able to choose anything higher than this. This is a full HD resolution with a 420 screen density. So be aware of that. Okay, so for example, I would like to choose for Pixel 2 or Pixel. Next. So here you need to download. Okay, so there are recommendations which Android version that you like to run. If the option is not available, for example, at the moment I have already downloaded Oreo and Nougat. If not, if you like to try this on Pi, you need to download. A system image must be selected to continue, so press download. You need to have a good network to download this, because it downloaded a real operating system, Android operating system, which will take quite long time. So for example, let me choose Oreo here, press next, give it a name, so Pixel, and press finish. This might take a while for a certain PC. To run your AVD, all you need to do is just press this button, run. For the first time, it might take a while to load your AVD, and this is also depend on the performance of your computer. So again, I would suggest for a better performance PC to load AVD. Alright, so AVD finally loaded with Android 8.1, and you can use your AVD to test your application. So from your Android Studio, all you need to do is just press this green button, look for the connected devices, and here we have Pixel API 27. This is the AVD that we just run here, and press OK. For the first time, it might take some time to compile your application and run on your AVD. So once the compilation and also installation completed, the application will run in your AVD. Do look at this status bar to see the progress of your application installation. Alright, so as you can see from here, it takes 1 minute 43 seconds for the first time to run the application on your AVD, but for the consecutive times, for the next time, it takes less than that, less than 5 to 10 seconds to load your application, to compile your application back to the AVD. So you can see this is the application. You can see this is the text view that we changed, and this is the activity from your activity main.xml, the name of the application, and then this is the text view. So if you like to see, you like to launch again the application, you can see from the launcher in your AVD. So look for the application name, which is my first application. Click on that and you can rerun the application again. So that is basically how to run the application on AVD. So any changes that you introduce, for example, let me change welcome to UUM. Press save and run. Select the deployment devices, connected devices, press OK. And then wait for a while. And installing APK. It took about 9 seconds to rerun the application again. Welcome to UUM. Alright, so that is how to run the application on AVD. To run the application on real devices, you need to have your Android device set as a development device. So for this to work, right, so I'm going to show you my device, my Android devices, Huawei P10 Plus. The first thing that you need to do is to set the development option. So to set the development option, go to System, Setting, System, and go to About Phone. Look under build number, and if this is your first time enabling the developer mode, you're going to be greeted with, you need to click on the build number for quite a number of time until there's a message telling you that you are now a developer. So since I'm already a developer, no need, you're already a developer. And then once that is done, you can go back, and then you can see there's a developer option turn on. There's new menu for the developer, and access that, turn on the developer options. And also that should it might differ from one phone to the other because of the Android version. So you need to be able to get the first thing, you need to get that developer option, and then from there you can enable the developer options, and then you need to connect from your computer using USB cable. Alright, so once you manage to enable the developer option, take your cable, USB cable, and plug into your computer to your device, and then select transfer file. Alright, this is very important. So once you connected your cable to the phone, make sure that you get this information, you get this window pop up that tells you the computer fingerprint is the following, and allow. Okay, so enable USB debugging, enable developer option, and then from Android Studio you should be able to get the following option where you can compile to the device. So if I select Huawei VKY, I can get this application compile on my device. So wait for a while. Installing APK. There you go. So this is basically running on my device. Welcome to UEM. So you can see the icon, my application, my first application. There you go. My first application. All right. Okay, so that should cover everything that in the outline. I hope this can be very useful for you in your venture of using Android Studio. So happy coding, and see you next time.